Well, good morning, friends. I put together a little bit of a video of what I've done over this past week to prepare this model for our little discussion today. And you really have to have a topic to have for these things, and I didn't want to jump in with a guest and all that jazz, but it's also important to do something on these things, otherwise there's no reason to do it at all. So what we're doing today is putting some water onto the Shipyard's diorama. And we're doing it in a very easy way. And so check out this raw video that I've done all this week. We're going to put some nice gothic music in the background, and I'll be back in a minute when we've got all the plugs and wires all plugged in and ready to do some chatting about. If you've got some questions for the show, feel free to add them into the side over here. I'll keep my eye out for them. Thanks for stopping by and having a chat with me. morning, everyone. Just giving a heads up. I got all the components here to be able to do the job today. Got my coffee full. The old lady's trying to get me to give her a ride somewhere. We're working on that. What we have right here is I'm building a diorama. I'm building the Shipyard at Foss diorama. I'm making a few changes to it, but specifically today we're going to go over how I made the water. And you know, it's pretty simple. What I did this time was I followed another YouTuber's idea. Marklin of Sweden. I love that guy's voice. He's pretty funny. But he used toilet paper for his water. I use snot rags or Kleenex, whatever you want to call it. But before we put down the water, we've got to color the threshold between the water and the land so that all that stuff is kind of initially colored, because, you know, coloring these things after the fact isn't always the cleanest way to do things. Painting inside the lines isn't very easy after the fact. So we paint the majority of the land beige color just to get a color down. The land's going to be colored by actual aggregates. I've got stone dust, I've got beach sand, I've got all kinds of different materials that I'm going to put down on this diorama. But you know, you got to start with color, and in my opinion that's the most important thing for me to attack at this time. Let's see, we got a webcam here so I can share. I'm not over there painting right now. I really do need to get a hold of Donald Trump's guy on hair, because I got a couple of spots missing, as I can see at the moment. But yeah, it's important to get color down before we start doing all these things. And actually, as we progress in these videos, we'll see that the water underneath the dock that I made beforehand has a blue tinge to it, and I don't want a blue tinge at all to the water. I want it to be I want this to be a harbor. I want it to look brown, not dirty, because brown is usually silt. All kinds of different things can make brown water. It doesn't mean that it's polluted. So get through the painting here. I gotta do a last check with the wife to make sure that she's gonna be able to walk over from the neighbors. I might have to pick her up. Oh yeah, if you got any questions, put them in the chat. I can see there's about 7 viewers now. We're kind of going from 10 down to 5, up to 10, down to 5. You know, leave your question. If you don't have time to hear me give the answers, just watch the video later. We'll do that, or something like that. There's show number 1, so you know, we gotta start somewhere, and it can't be perfect the first day. Otherwise, I just don't know how we could improve. Okay, so now that we had our ground cover painted a concrete color, I wanted to start the water area black. The reason I wanted to start with black is because I'm going to be putting a bunch of layers, probably about 3 or 4 layers of Kleenex on top of the water area, and I didn't want any white to really be reinforced through that. I wanted it to have a real depth to the color. And I think that after the Kleenex goes on, that is, it's gonna see through. You're gonna get a see-through effect. And whenever you're painting a large area, it's good to add some water just to ride it out. You're not really thinning out the paint. You're just making it so it can really get into the crevices and such like that. Check over here on my YouTubes or my Facebooks. Oh, okay, so we got a question from Kevin over on Facebook. What am I gonna use? So Kevin asks, what am I gonna use for... Here, let's get some webcamage going on. And then we'll also get some pictures going on here. What am I going to be using for the water? That's a good question. I don't know. Just kidding. So the material I'm going to be using for the water itself is actually going to be my glue, my weld bond glue. I have some gel acrylic gel gloss medium, which is an acrylic medium. I'm going to use that. I'm not going to use that because the paper really adds the ripples of the waters perfectly, and if I start adding a gel to those ripples, I have a feeling that it's gonna fill in all the little dips and valleys and kind of ruin the effect on me. So I'm gonna be using my normal glue. Gotta find our video here. You see, I didn't do the paper techniques on camera because I kind of wanted to direct everybody to go find Marklin of Sweden. That gentleman's YouTube channel has a easy water. Get rid of the sound here. He's got an easy water video, and it's so easy, his technique. I wouldn't want to redo it on this show here, so because, you know, I don't want to steal the technique. And I often see people using techniques that I used on YouTube probably about 3 and 4 years ago, and they don't give credit. So I'm not going to fall into that trap. I didn't invent the wheel. Some techniques I did invent myself, but I'm not going to take credit for those things because I'm sure there's at least 100 of you out there who have also done this stuff. And if I said that I was the creator of something that you've done, now wouldn't that make you feel a little crappy? It does me when I see people who've actively copied my work. Or have, you know, it makes me feel like, well, what's the point in trying to do these things if you're not going to share how you found out these things. And this technique I learned was from Marklin of Sweden. And that gentleman's funny. He's got great videos, and he's builds a very nice railroad. So these are things that I've things I want to do with my future self is to promote other people. So just go over there, and if you're not subscribed to his channel, subscribe to his channel, because there's really nice. He does some very funny editing techniques. He's got he adds a little bit of comedy, and actually does a little bit of editing that adds to the comedy. So I don't know, I really like his channel. So what I did here, what you can see here down on the board is Kleenex. You see the box of Kleenex in the corner of the diorama there. I used 4 layers, probably about 4 or 5 layers, and you can see down at the bottom there's a little bit of black showing through. But what happens is when all the glue dries and all that stuff, there's a lot of glue intermingled with all the Kleenex. When it dries, you can actually see that. Let's fast forward a bit here. Get to the next video maybe. What you can see here is that there's a lot of glue, and it looks white, but you see me paint black underneath it just before. And that black is going to start showing through as the glue dries. However, the thing is so much glue gets sucked up by the Kleenex that it takes about 3 or 4 days to cure and become clear again. But the black does start showing through after a period of time. All I'm doing here is creating the Could I come out for a moment?
Cut that moment out. You know?
Okay. So what we want to do is we want to have the sets of waves molded into the... Oh, here we go. That's done. Should start making a playlist of all these. Let's do this instead. Here we go. Monitor capture. Get rid of that. You're just going to see down in the bottom corner that my Windows hasn't been activated. Windows actually puked the other day. It broke the boot sector, and now my my registration key for Windows isn't really working, obviously. So I'm not a cheap bugger who stole Windows. I just am a victim of some guy's system. So as you can see, the black is showing through on this, but it'll take about 3 or 4 days for the glue to actually dry all the way. Now there's a couple of things that I'd like to point out. Number one is when you're working with foam, foam's always going to leach its gases because it's just full of gas. It's full of it's a chemical reaction that's probably not finished, you know? So what happens is that in between the glue and the foam, you'll get bubbles and white. it just starts looking murky and stuff like that. So this technique is actually really cool because all those bubbles and gas and stuff like that is going to be trapped underneath the Kleenex, so that when I get to my next step of coloring the Kleenex, that's going to be 2 layers above where the gas is going to be getting trapped in this whole mix. So I am pretty sure that I'm not going to have a problem with that. Well, what do we got here? Play. Yeah, turn off the sound there. I was listening to The Cure. Pulling out parts from, like, I never throw out any parts when a kit comes. It's you find you know, the wooden sprues or this and that. If you save those things, they can come in handy at a later date. And I have to cover up these foam ends here to make it look like a concrete slab. And this leftover laser board from Imagine That Laser Art Kit is going to work fine to you know, just get to the end of the pier so that the transition between water and land is complete. There are no more parts that I have to add, and once these parts are painted, they're concrete color, or not. It's a beige. It's not even concrete. That'll be good enough for that transition to be completed. So never throw out your kit parts. Let's fast forward here to see what happens. Yeah, so there's more of this pier work. As you can see, I've got detail parts down below that I keep around because, you know, it's really hard to color these things realistically, so I leave them on the bench for a long period of time. And you know, I think to myself, oh, they need a little bit of gray, or they need a little bit of this, and I do that over a period of time, and it takes me probably about a month to really paint detail parts, because, you know, on one side my eyes are really bad, and painting detail parts are killer to me. But on the other hand, you know, it's really hard to paint these things realistically when you don't have good images to copy from. I have a bunch of brass and copper weights from when I was working in the machine shop, and they come in real handy for a number of different things, especially keeping parts in place as the glue is curing. So let's go to another photo or video here. See where we're at in the mix. Hopefully we're moving on to a section here where we start painting. We'll have to see. What are we doing here? Painting the launch area for the boat. Oh, okay, this is where we get into the nitty-gritty. Okay. So to paint the water, I want to get a variation in color between green and brown. But finding the correct colors right off the hop isn't really the easiest thing to do. First, we have to deal with the fact that the Kleenex is white and it's making everything look too bright. So at the start, I'm using the color I wanted to use if it was a black area, and it really is not working correctly for me. So I have to really get things put together properly. But then, you know, once you start doing a color, you've got to put the color out. Otherwise, you're going to have areas of the diorama that have unique colorations that stick out too much. And I don't want to have that. Here we go. So now I'm using a tint from it's a Createx tint for it's an airbrushing color. It's for transparent coloring. I just wanted to try to get the color to, I don't know, get a little bit of depth on its own. I really didn't think that this worked either, so really had to move on to a new color range, or really just a palette that was going to work better for me, because this really isn't working. Everything looks way too bright. Looks like what you'd find in the bottom of a baby's diaper. Not my idea of the color I want. Let's hope that the next video has the color, proper color. Okay, so now we've started adding a darker green. The camera shut off on me. What I put down was an army green on top of that pukey green color, and now I'm adding a burnt umber to tone it down in the way I really want it to go. This is kind of like using a bazooka to cut a hole in the wall. Like, I really had to drastically change the color to bring it to where I wanted it to be. And this is old paint. It's old paint, so it's got the coagulated parts, and I'm just hiding those in the diorama. You know, when you get to watch these shows, you see where the bodies are buried. Drink a coffee here. So yeah, my end color is an army green, like a dark olive green color, kind of like combat pants, what you see the color of combat pants, with a brown color. It's not burnt umber, it's raw umber. Yeah, I think it's raw umber. I don't know for sure. Let's see. Oh my gosh, it is burnt umber. So burnt umber, and what I'm doing here is I have, it's really wet. All the area is really wet, but I added water to it with a little bit drop of soap. And that means that these colors are really intermingling with each other and mixing, and the browns becoming part of the green and the greens becoming part of the brown. And I know it still looks bright, but you know, when you see it in the end, it turns dark as dark can be. The colors from underneath, like the black color really came through, or I don't know what happened. The other thing is that underneath the dock, I don't really have to paint all the ground underneath the dock. I just have to paint about 1.5 inches in from the outside all the way around, because that's what you're gonna see. And also I used all that moss from the forest. You know, we got some photos to look at here. So as you can see, underneath the dock here, the moss does have blue in it, but it just turns to a depth of color. There's going to be obvious shadow underneath the dock, so that's going to create a dark blue color on top of the waves. It doesn't matter what color the water is. The shadow on top of the water is going to be the deciding factor for light. And then on top, I'm going to have the boards, the planks on top of the dock anyways, so that's going to cover up a lot of our transition here that's bothering my mind's eye. I also added the first layer of glue to the top of the water. And these pictures are taken over a period of a day. That's with flash, without flash. But you can see how the water is really starting to come out in a nice way. And that's pretty much where we stand today. Webcam's not showing because it's in the wrong spot. Anyways, so yeah, I put a little bit of Woodland Scenics ground foam in the middle of the launch pad where the boat's gonna go, because I want to have some color underneath the boat. So if you see a little bit of yellow in the middle there, that's because of that ground foam. And I think that's gonna wrap up today's show. I don't think we got any questions on YouTube. I don't know if it's working or not. Oh, we do. We got a message. We got Toyman2448. We're building a diorama, dude. And thanks for commenting. Show's kind of crappy today. There's a little had a lot of things going on today that kind of got in the way. So next week we're gonna do another show. If anybody wants to be a part of the show, comment in this video here. I'll send a link to you to become a part of the newsletter, to be able to get notified when I'm about to go live. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this session. Next week, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to put a couple more layers of glue onto the water so that I can transition between the dock and the lake, or whatever, the lac, whatever you want to call it. Next week we're going to talk about ground cover in the launch area itself, and probably do some of the dock areas. I don't know. I might come up with something totally different during the week, so next week's going to be maybe a surprise too. If you want to come on the show and talk with me while we're running over these things, feel free to contact me over Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever. Or my email, perry.ron@gmail.com. I know a couple of people like to talk to me privately because their friends are don't like me all that much. And that's cool too, so just contact me by my email like you usually do. Thanks for watching, everybody. Next week, Sunday, 10 a.m. Talk to you later.